The house is finally quiet. It's a sound I'm still getting used to. This deep, humming silence that used to feel like a void but is slowly starting to sound like peace. I find myself walking softly, as if not to disturb it, listening to the gentle echo of my own footsteps on the hardwood floor. It's a strange comfort to prove to myself that this new life is real, that it's mine. I post a picture. It's nothing special, just my garden. The roses finally blooming after a long winter, a simple cup of tea steaming on the patio table. It's a small declaration of survival. And then, just as I knew it would, his name appears. The first one to watch my story. Every single time. It happens so fast it feels automated. A ghost in the machine of my life. It's more than just a view, you know. It feels like a presence, a weight, a constant, silent surveillance that makes me question everything I do. Am I choosing this new wallpaper for myself, or because I know he would have hated it? Am I planting these flowers to bring color to my own world, or to show him how vibrant my life is without him? It's a terrible thought that maybe I'm not rebuilding at all. Perhaps I'm just redecorating a stage, carefully arranging the furniture for an audience of one who never even bought a ticket. This silent validation he offers with his viewership, it has become a strange, toxic kind of fuel. And I'm terrified to admit how much I've come to depend on it, how empty the room feels before his name shows up. But last night was different. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the glass of wine, or the loneliness that sometimes creeps in when the sun goes down. I did something I promised myself I wouldn't. I posted a song, not just any song, but our song. The one we danced to in the kitchen that one rainy Tuesday. The one he used to hum when he thought I wasn't listening. It was a reckless, impulsive thing to do, a quiet scream into the digital void, hoping he would hear it. I watched my phone, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for the inevitable. And then it happened. His name appeared, but this time it wasn't his view that made my breath catch in my throat. It was what happened immediately after. A split second later, something so unexpected, so out of character, that it left a silence in my mind that was louder than any of the shouting matches we ever had. All our years of arguments, of doors slamming and tears falling, they were nothing compared to this sudden, deafening quiet that followed his name. It was a silence that changed everything, that made me realize this digital haunting was far more complicated than I ever imagined. And in that moment, I knew that whatever game we were playing, the rules had just been completely rewritten, and I had no idea how to move forward from here. If you've ever felt a silence that screamed, maybe you know what I mean? It's funny how the mind works, how a single, silent moment can send you spiraling back through the years. I remember the day we met with such clarity it feels like a movie I could step back into. It was at a small, independent bookstore, the kind that smells of aging paper and dust. I was reaching for a book on a high shelf, and there he was, offering to help. There was no grand gesture, no clever line. Just a quiet smile and eyes that seemed to understand the weariness I carried without me having to say a word. We talked for 2 hours, surrounded by the stories of others, not realizing we were starting our own. It was so simple then. There were no screens, no hidden meanings, just two people finding an unexpected comfort in a shared love for forgotten words. Our life together wasn't built on grand adventures or expensive gifts. It was built in the quiet spaces between the noise. It was the way he'd make me a cup of tea, exactly how I liked it, and leave it on my nightstand before he left for work. It was the evenings we'd spend on the sofa, not even talking, just reading our own books, the only sound being the turning of pages and the soft rhythm of our breathing. We created a language that didn't require words. A glance across a crowded room was enough to say, "I'm here." A simple touch of his hand on my back was enough to say, "You're safe." It was in these thousands of insignificant moments that our love became a home, a fortress I truly believed was impenetrable. That song, the one I posted last night, it wasn't our wedding song or anything so formal. It was from a rainy Tuesday afternoon, one of those gray, forgettable days. I was trying to cook something complicated, getting frustrated, and the whole kitchen was a mess. He came in, didn't say a word, just turned on the small radio on the counter. That song started playing, and he took the wooden spoon out of my hand and pulled me close. We danced right there, between the spilled flour and the stack of dirty dishes, slowly turning in the dim light of the kitchen. He hummed along, slightly off-key, and for those 3 minutes, the world outside didn't exist. It was just us. A perfect, unplanned, ordinary moment that became the cornerstone of everything. He had this way of seeing me, not just looking at me, but truly seeing the person I was beneath all the layers I presented to the world. He saw the insecurities I tried so hard to hide, and he didn't try to fix them. He just made space for them. When I would doubt myself, he wouldn't just shower me with empty platitudes. He would remind me of a specific time I was strong, a specific moment I had overcome something. He collected my small victories like they were precious stones. With him, I felt my sharp edges soften. The constant anxiety that hummed beneath my skin would quiet down in his presence. It was a kind of peace I had never known before, a feeling of being wholly and completely accepted, flaws and all. But even perfect memories can become haunted. I remember another evening, years later, sitting in that same comfortable silence on the sofa. But this time, it felt different. It was heavier. I looked over at him, at the familiar lines of his face illuminated by his reading lamp, and I felt a sudden, inexplicable distance. It was like watching him through a pane of glass. He was right there, but I couldn't reach him. Nothing had happened, no fight had occurred, but an invisible shift had taken place. It was the first time our silence didn't feel like a connection, but like the beginning of a void. At the time, I dismissed it, pushed it away as my own foolish anxiety. Now I see it for what it was, the first tiny crack in the foundation of our fortress. That small crack in the foundation, it didn't stay small for long. It began to spiderweb into other parts of our life, in ways so subtle I felt crazy for even noticing them. It was in the way he started adding an extra teaspoon of sugar to his coffee, something he never used to do. It was in the new aftershave he started wearing, a scent I didn't recognize, that seemed to belong to someone else's life. These were insignificant details, the kind of things you're not supposed to build a case on. If I had said anything, I would have sounded like a mad woman, inspecting every little change for a hidden meaning. So I stayed silent, collecting these tiny pieces of evidence, these little shifts in our shared universe, and I stored them away, letting them grow heavy in my heart. The comparisons started quietly, a whisper in the back of my mind. I'd look at pictures of us from years ago, and I'd study my own face, my own smile. Was I less vibrant now? Had I let myself go? I started paying more attention to the women he worked with, the ones he'd mention in passing. Were they younger? More interesting? I began to see myself through what I imagined his eyes were seeing, and it was a cruel, unforgiving lens. The woman who danced in the kitchen felt like a different person, someone more confident and carefree. I felt like I was fading, my colors turning to gray, and I was terrified that he was the only one who could see it. This fear became a constant companion, sitting beside me on the sofa where his warmth used to be. Then came the phone. It used to be just a device, something he'd leave lying on the counter, but it slowly became an extension of his hand, a third party in our relationship. The screen was always angled away from me, just slightly. He'd take it with him into the bathroom. A message would chime late at night, and he'd say it was just work, but his fingers would type a reply with a speed and intensity that felt personal. I never asked to see it. I was too proud, or maybe too afraid of what I might find. That little glowing screen became a symbol of everything I couldn't access, a locked room in the house of our marriage. Our silences, which once felt so full of understanding, were now filled with the sound of his thumb tapping against glass. I spent so much time telling myself I was exaggerating, that I was creating problems where there were none. Every marriage has its seasons, right? This was just winter. I'd list all the good things, all the reasons my fears were unfounded. He still came home every night. He still asked about my day. He still held my hand when we crossed the street. I clung to these gestures like a lifeline, using them to silence the screaming intuition inside me that knew something was fundamentally broken. I accused myself of being insecure, of being paranoid. I tried so hard to be the cool, understanding wife, the one who didn't need constant reassurance. But all that effort was just a way to avoid the terrifying truth that was staring me right in the face. And now, this digital haunting. It feels like an echo of those last few years. He's present, but he's not really here. He's watching, but he's not participating. It's the same pattern, just on a different platform. His name at the top of my viewer list is the modern equivalent of him sitting across the dinner table, physically there but emotionally a million miles away. It offers a phantom connection, just enough to make me feel like I'm not completely alone, but not enough to feel truly seen. It's a breadcrumb, and I'm ashamed to admit how hungry I've been for it. This silent, constant surveillance isn't about him wanting me back. It's about him not being able to let go of the control of his front row seat to my life. By posting that song, I realize now I wasn't just being nostalgic. I was testing the silence. I was taking one of those tiny, insignificant moments from our past and holding it up to the glass wall between us, just to see if he would even notice the reflection. I was asking, without words, "Do you remember this? Do you remember us?" I expected the usual response, his name, and then nothing. The familiar, hollow validation of his viewership. But what happened next was different. It wasn't hollow at all. It was a reaction, a definitive, undeniable action that shattered the comfortable distance of our digital arrangement. And in that moment, I understood that this wasn't just a passive haunting. It was a conversation, and he had just answered. His response, whatever it was, wasn't a message with words. It was an action, a digital gesture so specific, so tied to our shared history that it couldn't be an accident. And my mind, which I had so carefully trained to be still, became a whirlwind. Reason screamed at me that it was a manipulation, a calculated move to pull me back into his orbit. But my heart did that foolish, traitorous thing. It fluttered. For a split second, the woman who danced in the kitchen was back, her hands covered in flour, believing that a simple song could fix everything. I felt a surge of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years, a fragile, terrifying hope. And the battle inside me began. The war between the woman who remembers the pain and the girl who still remembers the dance. This hope is a dangerous guest. I've spent so much time building walls to keep it out, stone by stone, tear by tear. I know that at this age, rebuilding from ruins takes longer. The foundation is less steady, the spirit more tired. Letting hope in feels like willingly inviting a saboteur into the fortress I've so painstakingly constructed. If I let myself believe in this one gesture, what happens when the silence returns? What happens when I'm left standing in the rubble again, only older, more exhausted? The fear of starting over isn't just about being alone. It's about the fear that I won't have the strength to do it a second time. And yet, there it is, a tiny, persistent weed growing through the cracks in my carefully laid defenses, threatening the entire structure. Suddenly, the quiet of my house feels different. It's no longer the sound of peace, but the sound of absence. His action, this small digital tremor, has reminded me of the sheer, crushing weight of loneliness. I look around at the life I've built, the garden, the books, the quiet evenings, and I'm forced to ask myself a question I've been avoiding. Is it enough? Am I truly content? Or have I just become proficient at managing my solitude? I was so proud of learning to enjoy my own company, but maybe I was just learning to endure it. This ghost in the machine has made the real ghost in my house, the one that sits in his empty chair, feel more present than ever. And I hate myself for admitting how much I miss the simple, solid weight of him being here. The guilt is immediate and suffocating. Why did I post that song? It was a moment of weakness, a selfish indulgence in nostalgia, and now I've disturbed the fragile peace. My mind begins to rewind, not just to last night, but through all the years, searching for my own culpability. I see all the times I chose silence over confrontation, the moments I retreated into myself when I should have reached out. Was I the one who let the distance between us grow? Did my own fear of conflict create the very void I couldn't bear? I accused him of being emotionally absent, but I was also a ghost in our marriage, haunting the hallways of our home with unspoken resentments and unvoiced needs. His digital action feels like a reflection of my own past failures. Then, the pragmatist in me wakes up, shaking me by the shoulders. I force myself to remember. I catalog the evidence. The phone angled away, the scent of a different life on his clothes, the chilling indifference in his eyes during our last argument. A single, sentimental gesture on a screen doesn't erase that. It can't. This is a game, I tell myself. He sees me moving on, creating a life that doesn't include him, and he can't stand it. This isn't an apology. It's a leash. A quick tug to remind me that I'm still his to watch, his to control from a distance. I must hold on to this anger, this clarity. It's the only thing that feels solid right now. The rational part of me knows that hope is the most beautiful and most effective kind of poison. But what if I'm wrong? That's the question that paralyzes me. What if, for the first time in years, I am misreading everything? What if this isn't a game, but a genuine, clumsy attempt to reach across the chasm we created? The fear of being made a fool of is immense, but it is rivaled by a different, deeper fear. The fear of missing the one real chance to understand what happened to us, or even to heal. To slam the door now might be the sensible thing to do, but it could also be the loneliest. I'm trapped between two terrifying possibilities, the risk of unbearable pain and the risk of lifelong regret. And I am standing perfectly still, caught in the crossfire of my own heart and mind, unable to move an inch. So now, a new silence has fallen. Not the empty silence of my house or the watchful silence of his viewership, but my own. I haven't responded. I haven't blocked him. I haven't done a thing. I just stare at the screen, at the evidence of his action, and I feel nothing and everything all at once. The power has shifted. For all these months, I was the one performing, arranging my life for his gaze. Now, it is my turn to act, and my inaction is its own deafening response. This prolonged emotional silence, the one that defined the end of our marriage, has found its way here, into this digital space. And I am left to wonder if breaking it will be an act of strength or the most foolish mistake of my life. Days turned into a week, and the silence from my side of the screen stretched on, becoming a character in itself. I realized the paralysis was its own kind of pain, a limbo where I was neither moving forward nor truly looking back. I was just waiting for a sign, for clarity, for something to break the spell. And last night, I understood that the sign would not come from him. It had to come from me. With a breath that felt like it was pulled from the very bottom of my lungs, I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the search bar, trembling slightly. I was so afraid of what I would find, but even more afraid of spending one more day in this agonizing uncertainty. I needed to see his page. I needed to see if my song had left any mark, any ripple, on the surface of his new life. I typed in his name, a sequence of letters my fingers still knew by heart. The screen loaded for a fraction of a second, and then the result appeared. It wasn't a picture of him with someone new. It wasn't a cryptic post. It was just a few cold black clinical words on a white background. User not found. I blinked, convinced I had made a typo. I searched again, carefully, deliberately. The same result. A hollow feeling started to spread from my stomach outward, cold and heavy. He hadn't just ignored the song. He hadn't just stayed silent, he had vanished. He had taken his digital presence, his silent viewership, his phantom connection, and he had erased it completely from my world. He blocked me. The ghost in the machine was finally, officially, exorcised, and the first emotion I felt wasn't relief. It was a brutal, gut-wrenching wave of abandonment, so powerful it took my breath away. This was it. This was the door slamming shut, the final, definitive end that we never had in person. Posting that song wasn't just a test, it was a question. It was me standing on my side of the chasm, whispering, "Do you remember?" And his answer wasn't a whisper back. It was an explosion. It was the demolition of the bridge between us. All this time, I thought his viewership was a thin thread keeping us connected. But I was wrong. It was just a leash. And by reminding him of our shared intimacy, of a time when we were real, I had prompted him to finally, violently, cut it. He didn't want to be reminded of the man who danced in the kitchen. But as the initial shock subsided, something else began to crystallize in the painful silence. A thought so clear and sharp it felt like a shard of glass in my mind. His constant watching. It was never about lingering love or a desire to see me happy. It was about possession. It was about him needing to keep a key to my life, to have access, to be the silent observer of my every move. He needed to know that he still had an effect on me. My song was a declaration that the memory was now mine. I was the one who owned it, who could bring it out into the light. And he couldn't stand that. He couldn't stand to be a character in my story. He had to be the author. By blocking me, he wasn't rejecting me. He was admitting his own powerlessness. He was running away from a memory he could no longer control. I looked around my quiet house, at the furniture I had so carefully arranged. For weeks, I had wondered who I was arranging it for. Now I knew. The audience of one has officially left the theater. The silence in this house is different now. It is no longer a watchful silence, filled with the ghost of his presence. It is a true, deep, and terrifying emptiness. There is no one on the other side of the screen. There is no one to perform for. There is no one to prove anything to. The stage is empty. The lights are down. And I am completely, utterly, and finally alone. And in this deafening new silence, for the first time, I don't feel haunted. I feel a terrifying sense of freedom. I am finally unobserved. This freedom doesn't feel like a victory lap. It feels vast, like standing on the edge of a cliff where a bridge used to be. For so long, my life was defined in relation to him, first as his partner, and then as the woman he was watching. His presence, even as a ghost, gave my days a certain shape, a strange and toxic purpose. Now, that shape is gone. I am left with myself, raw and undefined. The silence he left behind by blocking me is so much louder than his viewership ever was. It's the sound of a story ending mid-sentence, and I'm realizing that closure isn't a beautifully written final chapter. Sometimes, it's just the author walking away, leaving you with a handful of blank pages and the terrifying responsibility of figuring out how to write the rest of the book all on your own. I see now that I wasn't just testing him when I posted that song. I was testing myself. I was holding a candle to the darkest corner of my own heart to see what was still living there, what still answered to his name. I needed to know if I was truly healing, or just getting better at hiding the wound. His final act of erasure, as painful as it was, gave me the answer. It forced me to see the crutch I had been leaning on. I wasn't just a victim of his digital haunting. I was a willing participant. I needed his viewership to feel like I hadn't been completely discarded. It was a painful, fragile proof of my own existence in his world. And letting go of that is a grief all on its own, separate from the grief of losing the man I once loved. So, I sit here now, with my cup of tea getting cold on the table, looking at the roses in my garden. They seem brighter today, more vivid, now that there are no eyes watching them but my own. The question is no longer who I am planting them for. The question is, What do you do with a garden that is finally, truly, just for you? Where do you even begin? I don't have the answer. Maybe the peace I was searching for wasn't in the quiet of the house, but in the silence of his absence. Or maybe this is just a different kind of loneliness. I don't know if I'm ready for this much freedom, but for the first time, the quiet doesn't feel like a void waiting to be filled. It feels like space. If you've ever had to learn a new silence, perhaps you know what I mean.